Welcome to BSB Preview, our monthly preview of upcoming titles. And today we have authors telling you all about their May titles and reading a selection to entice you to purchase them. And we'll be running a sale, and I'll be posting a link in the chat roll. Just a couple of housekeeping items. If you have a question for the authors, one or all, please type those in the Q&A box. And if you have just want to do shout outs, just feel free to put those in the chat roll. So I am going to get us started on Facebook Live. So while I'm doing that, I'm going to toss out a question to our esteemed panel. And I'll just quickly run through who we've got with us today. We've got Nance Sparks. We have Radclyffe, Lesley Davis, Shelley Thrasher, Fiona Riley, Vali, Felice Picano will be joining us shortly, and we have a reading from Morgan Lee Miller. I'm Carson Tate, and I'm your host, and I am going to toss out this question. I'm going to start with Allie. Hi, Felice.
Hi, Carson. Thank you.
And so the question I'm tossing out to all of you, starting with Allie, is what's your favorite thing about your upcoming title? So Allie, after you finish, you get to pick who goes next.
All right. How much time do I have?
Well, you have like an hour or
you already wasted your time.
A minute.
I love everything about my new upcoming book. It's got everything that I love reading about. So it's got Knights Templar. It's got the Priory of Sion. It's got treasure. It's got pretty girls. So it's very exciting, and I'm hoping everybody loves it because I would love to turn this one into a series. Not that I haven't done that before, but I would really love to turn this one into a series.
Knights Templar and pretty girls. What more could you ask for? Allie, pick someone who's next.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
How about Shelley?
Okay. Shelley. I like my book because it gave me a chance to go to Cambodia for 2 weeks.
Wow.
So that was a great, I sent a letter to myself so the IRS would know that I went for purposes of writing a book. I proposed the book, and then I went and had a ball and used practically everything I did in the book. So it was really a fun book to write, the easiest one I've had so far. So Radclyffe.
Other than the fact that it's finished, this is a favorite of mine, I think, because I revisited a favorite setting in West Philadelphia where I used to live, and favorite characters that I started writing about 15 years ago.
Wow.
Felice.
Okay, so my book is set in the 1880s in England and Europe, and a large portion of it takes place in London. London was the first place I visited outside of the United States in 1960 when Icelandic Air had $100 return trip fares for students. So it gave me a chance to pay back, as it were. Nance.
Well, I'm with Radclyffe. I love that it's finished. But I love it because it's dear to my heart, and wounded souls who get to heal, and animals, horses. What's not to love? And do we have another member who we need to call on?
Lesley is going.
For me, it's the sequel to Starstruck. So you've got characters that we've already met before. Got 2 new ones that are doing a film. So it's got my favourite things in of films, time travel, romance, and then a crazy fan. So hopefully everybody will enjoy it.
I think I'm last, so I'll just go, okay? This book is called Bet the Farm, and it's actually the second book in the High Stakes Romance series. And I think we're talking about the title, but I enjoyed this book the most, writing this, because it's Lauren's story, and she's like the fun, quirky best friend that you meet in the first book, although it is a standalone. And it's just really fun to write somebody who's really whimsical and creative and sort of flies by the seat of her pants. And this book starts with a one-night stand. So that was new for me to write. And that was a lot of fun to start because then you kind of work the relationship backwards. So, spoiler.
Well, since we're ending with you, let's start with you. So will you tell us a story, Fiona?
I will tell you a story. So Bet the Farm is Lauren Calloway's story, and it takes place
and
in
Boston. I'm sorry. If everybody would mute and hide their video, and then we'll let Fiona have the full screen for her story. Thank you.
All right, so this is the second book in the high stakes romance series. Lauren Calloway is a realtor, and she does luxury real estate. And the book opens with her best friend getting Realtor of the Year. And Lauren has had some major pitfalls recently. A lot of sales have fallen through at the last minute, and she's feeling really down. She's excited for her friend, but she's also feeling like she's mourning a little bit of some of the work that's happening for her. So at the start of this, her best friend's celebrating a major win, and she has a new relationship, and they're all lovey-dovey, and it's super obnoxious, even though she's happy for her friend. So she's feeling both distressed that she's not doing well, but also really being reminded how long it's been since she's been laid. So she volunteers to go to the bar and buy drinks for everyone. They're at the Mirage Bar. And as she goes up to the bar, she meets Thea. Thea Boudreau is from a farm in Maine, and she moved to Boston. She stayed here, but her family ran a dairy farm. And about a week ago, she found out that her mother is going to sell the farm. It's been in her family for legacies, long time, generations. And she's not sure what to do with her life when she doesn't have the tether of the farm to go back to. She's not sure who she is without the dairy farm in her past. And she's sort of brooding over that and kind of cranky. And she's with her best friend having a drink, and her best friend just abruptly leaves. Bad first date? Thea turned to find an attractive woman surveying her curiously. Her long, dirty blonde hair was up in a stylish twist, and a perfectly penciled eyebrow was raised in Thea's direction. No? What makes you ask that? Thea turned to face her, appreciating the sexy black dress she was wearing and the green necklace that complemented her hazel eyes. Well, she left in a hurry, with her drink still half full next to you, the sexy mystery woman said as she pointed to Avni's forgotten drink. That's alcohol abuse. Or bad manners, or you just really offended her. Because even on a bad date, I've never left a half full glass. What makes you think I offended her? Thea asked, charmed by this woman's forwardness. The well-manicured middle finger in your direction, she said with a shrug. Thea laughed. She's my work bestie, and her boyfriend had an embarrassing emergency, so she had to split. But I appreciate the narrative you've concocted. It's quite imaginative. I've been known to have a vivid imagination, she said. I'm glad to hear you weren't just dumped on the spot. I was feeling bad for you. Well, she did leave me with a full drink and no company, Thea reasoned, in no rush to stop talking to this woman. I'd be interested in hearing more about this imagination of yours, if you'd like to join me. She seemed to consider this. She glanced over her shoulder, and Thea realized she must be with the coworker group that Tegan mentioned before. You're with the fancily dressed people in the back, right? They probably wouldn't miss you for a few minutes. Thea motioned for Tegan to come over. Can I buy you a drink? Sure, she smiled. Great. Thea pulled out the chair next to her, pushing Avni's abandoned cocktail toward the back of the bar. Tegan stopped in front of them. Thea was about to ask her new acquaintance what she'd like when she realized she didn't know her name. So, Lauren, she supplied. Hi, Lauren. I'm Thea. What can I get you? A lemon drop with a sugar rim, please. Tegan nodded and disappeared. You're into sweet things? Thea asked. Not necessarily, Lauren replied, and Thea knew she'd met someone special already. But you are into women, right? Thea didn't feel like wasting her time on a beautiful straight girl. She'd betted plenty of those, and she hadn't found them worth the trouble afterwards. Not that she had any afterward in mind, but still. Not necessarily, Lauren repeated as Tegan dropped off her drink and walked away. Really? See, I was hoping you spoke to me originally about feeling bad that I'd gotten dumped on my first date because you wanted to join me for a drink. Because you're into women. Thea feigned sadness. But I'm wrong, huh? I didn't say that, Lauren said as she sipped her drink. Thea took it as a green light to continue flirting. Well then, in that case, I was just dumped on a first date. Or seriously? Lauren asked, shocked. No, Avni's boyfriend got locked outside in his boxer briefs, Thea replied. Though I'm sad she had to leave. I'm glad to have met you, Lauren, of the fancily dressed people. Oh, this old thing? Lauren motioned toward the amazing dress, and Thea let her eyes linger on the way the fabric hugged Lauren's curves just so. If this is one of your old things, I'd be happy to watch you model some of your newer articles of clothing, Thea said. When Lauren didn't flinch at the comment, she dialed up her flirtation a few notches, or in less clothing. That could be arranged, Lauren smiled before licking at the sugar rim of her glass. All of Thea's worries from before disappeared at the quick flick of the pink tongue. Lauren had all of her attention, and suddenly Avni's playful prediction that she'd be laid sooner rather than later felt a lot more likely. Lauren wasn't quite sure what had come over her, but she was thoroughly enjoying this exchange with Thea. Maybe it was the champagne, or maybe it were those steely blue eyes and the way Thea's long dark hair framed her face in the sexiest way. Or maybe it was because she hadn't been flirted with like this in a long time, but something about their easy banter was getting her hot and making her move faster than she normally would. I'm starting to think my friend leaving me alone at the bar was the best thing that could have happened to me. Thea's lips were full and inviting. There was something about the way she purred those words that made Lauren want to jump her on the spot, which was ridiculous since she'd just met her. But Lauren could feel the chemistry between them like an electrical current. She wanted to know if Thea's touch would feel the same way. The best thing, Lauren asked. She could think of a few things that were more enjoyable. Well, not the best thing, I suppose. Thea dropped her hand from the bar to tug at the short hem of Lauren's dress. The touch was innocent enough, but Lauren felt her excitement build nonetheless. I'm sure we could find a few suitable alternatives, Lauren said, as she stilled Thea's hand on her thigh, holding it in place. If you're over being left, that is. So over it. Thea licked her lips as she gently squeezed Lauren's thigh. Lauren bit her bottom lip in response. Thea's touch was gentle, but firm. She wondered what else her touch could make her feel. Good. Then I'm glad she's gone. Lauren slid Thea's hand a little farther up her thigh. Me too. Thea leaned in, cupping Lauren's jaw with her free hand. Her touch was cool. Lauren could feel the droplets of condensation that transferred from Thea's glass along her jaw. One slow droplet trickled along her neck as it plunged towards her chest. Has anyone ever told you you have a gorgeous mouth? Lauren exhaled as Thea stroked her thumb along her jaw. You should see what it's capable of. Thea moaned. Show me. And that's where we're going to stop. You go read the book.
Somebody in the chat roll said, why does this not happen to me in my real life?
You got to go to the Mirage Bar after.
Got to go to the Mirage Bar. Or just read Fiona's book. So, Felice, will you read us a story?
Handsome, intelligent, street smart, ruthlessly ambitious, and omnisexual young Addison Gribbins has been hired by the Lord Exchequer of England to find his wife, who has been discovered missing. Is it a kidnapping or a more sinister plot? Addison vows to find her and bring her back no matter what it takes. And throughout the course of the book, we discover his own quite remarkable history. And at this point, he's telling about his life. He is 6 years old and his parents are dead, and he's been kicked out on the streets of London. Soon my food gave out and my money, and it was then that I remembered seeing a knot of the dirtiest boys all gathered in one portion of the Liverpool station building site, which was best covered with canvas against the weather. These were called by others Grimmins lads. Unlike the other boys and men who scattered like so many black beetles at the approach of dawn, these lads remained as they were in a group of 10 and were met by a horse-drawn dray at morning, which took them away. And after nightfall, I was told it brought them back there to sleep. Unlike the rest of us too, they were a compact and unified group, defending their little territory and sharing drink and victuals amongst themselves, and even lighting a fire for warmth. How they had treasoned the watchman and dog, I never found out. Those guardians never went near them. That one morning as they gathered where they were used to meeting the dray, hunger sparked me to approach them, and I asked them if they were going to work. Two of them my age looked me up and down, and one said, dustbins. Before I could utter more than, might I come there too at dustbins? We heard the clopping of a well-shod horse, and it pulled up, and they all clambered up into the open back of it behind the driver. He turned around, seeing me standing there, and said, "What's this then?" "He wants to come," one of the boys, I said. "Dustbins," said I, not knowing what I was saying. "Well, then, let's take a look." He leapt off and came down to look me over. If the boys were the dirtiest boys I'd ever seen, he was the very cleanest man. He was tall and not yet 40, with yellow hair which shone as though newly washed. His face and neck were pale, yet not quite pink, and so astoundingly clear they had a sort of glow. His jacket and coat were simple, his trousers equally slow, but immaculately unsoiled. His gloves, although ecru, were most unspotted I'd ever laid my eyes on. Coming up to me, he spun me around like a top, then pulled my lip as one does a horse. He felt my arms and legs all the time, making little comments of the teeth straight, of the arms fat, of the legs strong. "I need employment, sir," I said. "Do you now? But does employment need you? Does," he paused for dramatic effect and stared me down, "does the dustbins need you, young scallop?" He looked back at the boys gathered to watch and said, "Crayfish, how much did you earn last year?" "6 quid to keep for myself," the filthy boy replied. "Lobster tail, you?" 7 and 6. "Prawn?" 9 and 6. 9 and 6. The man remarked with a little whistle. "Now that's employment, my little scallop. But you are fat like a lower Thames scallop, isn't he, oyster?" "Fat as an oyster," replied little oyster. "We labor 6 days and rest the Sabbath," this very clean man said. "The 6th day is your earning. All the rest you labor for me. For this labor you shall receive ale, pies, broth, bread, and tarts and stews. Is this satisfactory, my young scallop?" "It is satisfactory." "Good. I am Andrew Marvell Grimmins, yes, named after the great poet. You from henceforth are scallop, and you are henceforth a Grimmins lad. Welcome him all."
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much. Perfect. Nance, would you like to read to us next? Tell us.
I'd be happy to.
That would be awesome. So
hello, everybody. I'm Nance Sparks, and I'll be reading from my debut novel, Cowgirl. I'd like to introduce you to my characters. Erin Jacobs trusts no one. Reeling from a devastating altercation with her foster family that's left her scarred inside and out, she's all too happy to isolate herself from the world, especially the rumors floating around town accusing her of murder. Carol Matthews has just finished college and is spending some time with her aunt and uncle before she decides where life will take her. That is, until her world's turned upside down. This passage is the moment that these two women will meet for the first time. Chapter 4. Carol inhaled deeply. 2 of her favorite scents teased her, campfire and coffee. She'd left her aunt and uncle's house about an hour earlier, craving an after-dinner walk to help digest the heavily fried meal. She inhaled again, turning her head to find the source. She looked left and right, but saw nothing. Then, just as she stepped past the dark, shadowy farmhouse on her left, she caught sight of an orange flicker off in the distance. Carol stopped mid-stride in the center of the road. A silhouetted figure sat next to the campfire, talking to someone that Carol couldn't see. She waited for a reply and yet heard nothing. Carol squinted, trying to find the second person. She looked, she caught movement closer to the fire. What was that, a dog? Was that laughter she heard? There's a dark cloud hanging over that farm. Death haunts that land. Carol could hear her aunt's voice in her head. She hadn't been able to shake the conversation with her aunt about this farm or its owner. Consumed with curiosity, she ducked between the strands of barbed wire and made her way towards the firelight. She'd covered about half the distance when the silhouetted figure spun around. "Who's out there? Make yourself known or I'll release the dog." Carol froze in her tracks and squeezed her eyes shut, chastising herself for trespassing on this woman's property. What had she been thinking? She allowed her breath to escape and then drew in another before trusting her voice. My name is Carol Matthews. I'm here visiting my aunt who lives just across the way. I saw the fire while I was out taking a walk and thought I'd say hello. Would you come up here to the light, Carol Matthews? I'd like to see who I'm talking to. Carol's heart was pounding in her chest with such force she felt deafened by it. She put one foot in front of the other, cautiously making her way towards the stranger next to the fire. She looked around, taking in how large the shepherd-type dog was, especially given that it was baring its teeth and growling at her. She felt every bit the fool for coming here. She froze and her breath caught when the woman suddenly snapped her fingers and made a hand signal to the dog. Great, she'd be mauled to death and no one would know where she was. Instinctively, she squeezed her eyes shut, though she forced them to reopen when nothing happened. There was no movement, no dog lunging for her throat, nothing at all. Carol allowed the trapped air to escape when she saw the dog simply eating from a bowl on the ground. The woman smiled at Carol, half of her face hidden in the shadows, half lit by firelight. Hi, Carol. My name is Erin Jacobs, and this is my dog, Bailey. Erin extended her hand in greeting. Carol took one step forward, closing the distance needed to shake Erin's hand. She instantly noticed by touch, more than sight, how rough and calloused her hands were. We're just sitting down to dinner. Would you like anything? Erin motioned towards a plate of food. Oh, I've already eaten. Thank you. I should go and allow you to eat in peace. Sit if you like. Enjoy the fire. You're welcome to this chair if you prefer it over a log. I'm sorry I only have the one out, but I don't get many visitors. Oh, please don't give up your chair. A log is fine. I don't want to be any trouble. Well, then the log is all yours. Would you like a cup of coffee? Carol inhaled. She had to admit the coffee smelled wonderful. I'd love a cup, but I'd only accept it after you finished your meal. Please eat. It was rude of me to intrude. Fair enough. So you're visiting your aunt and uncle? Erin picked up her fork. She scooped up a few potato pieces on the tines before popping them into her mouth. Carol turned her attention to the flames dancing in the fire pit. She heard the pop of hot sap trapped in a log and then enjoyed the release of sparks as they floated up in the air. Suddenly she'd realized she'd been asked a question. Sorry, yes, visiting. I arrived a couple days ago. Erin nodded, chewing on another bite of her meal. She set down her fork. The coffee's done. Why don't I get you a cup so I don't feel like I'm eating in front of you? The cups are just upstairs. It'll only take a second. Well, the coffee does smell amazing, Carol smiled. Erin lifted herself from the chair. She was much taller than Carol had expected. And she seemed so nice, much too nice to be a murderer. The fire popped and cracked again, pulling Carol's attention back to floating orange embers. Do you take anything in it? Erin turned to ask. Yes, cream and sugar. If it's no trouble, thank you. Carol answered before she looked up. When their eyes met, Carol's breath caught in her throat. Erin's face was now completely lit by firelight. Scars surrounded Erin's left eye, and the eye itself didn't look quite right, though it was difficult to distinguish why in the dim light. Carol did her best to control her breathing and stifle her shock. Erin nodded and turned back to the barn. The large dog Bailey was right at her side. Her back was now illuminated by the firelight. Carol caught sight of her knife in the back of her jeans. Who carries a knife around? Carol's heart pounded. What if she stabbed her mama right in the neck? Carol heard her aunt's voice in her head again. She remained statue still, waiting for Erin to disappear in the barn before she bolted back to the fence line. She tripped on something in the grass and fell to her knees. She blinked a couple times so her eyes could adjust to the darkness and then shot for the barbed wire fence. Carol ran all the way back to the safety of her aunt's house.
Well, she can't be all that bad if she makes good coffee, is
true. And has campfire, you know. There's something about a campfire.
It was like I was thinking about Felice, you know, that guy's getting a lot of food and stuff for his pay. He can't be all that. How bad can this be? You can see where I'm focused.
Yes.
Lesley Davis, will you tell us a story?
I will. Okay, I'm gonna. We're just checking my camera is on and my sound is on, since I have no idea how this works.
You're doing great.
Thank you. Okay, this is from In the Spotlight, which is the sequel to Starstruck. So you're going to see some familiar people like Cassidy and Mishka and Aidan. Aidan was the writer from Starstruck. The characters that we're seeing this time are ones that are going to be in the film of one of her books. You have Cole and Eris. They're the leading ladies in both the film and in the book. So I'm going to have to take my glasses off because I didn't bring my reading glasses. Okay. Eris was thankful she was able to blend into the sea of faces at the airport and go relatively unnoticed. She peeked over the rim of her sunglasses as she watched Cole signing autographs and happily posing for photos with a group of women who had surrounded her before she even got a chance to take a seat in the lounge. Eris was impressed how Cole handled the clamour of voices, the push and shove of everyone wanting their moment with her. Cole spotted her and gestured for her to come on over. Eris shook her head frantically, but one of the women saw the exchange and squealed out Eris's name. Busted. Eris waved at the women who all began calling for her to join in the impromptu selfie session. You're going to have to get used to that now. George, a security guard assigned to her and Cole by Aidan Darrow, nudged her to go join the madness. You and Cole's lives are now in the spotlight and it burns hard and fast there. Taking selfies and signing autographs with a bunch of squealing folk is the price you pay for fame today. He held out a hand. Give me your coffee cup and go court the masses. You'll need those bums on seats once the movie's out. Smooze and smile. I'll be watching them all, never fear. Eris turned back to where Cole was cheering for her along with the other women. She slipped off her sunglasses and had to smile at Cole's happy face. Here's my leading lady. Cole held out a hand to put Eris in close by her side. Let's get these photos done quickly before airport security comes and kicks us all out. Where are you going, Cole? Someone asked as they all took turns having their photos taken with Cole and Eris. You'd better have read the books. First stop is London. I can't wait to see you two bring those characters to life. I hope you get to do the whole series of books. Get your friends to go see it with you. I'm sure Hollister and Emily will get sequels. Eris had thought they were finished, but there was one more woman who pushed in quite forcefully between her and Cole. The dark-haired woman leaned heavily into Cole. Eris wasn't surprised. Cole did cut quite the dashing figure and seemed to have some very ardent fans. I was devastated to hear you've left Fortune's Rise, the woman said. Eris couldn't help but notice the muscle that tensed in Cole's jaw as she smiled one last time for the camera. It was time to move on. This movie offer was too good an opportunity to miss out on, and I get to work with Eris. It's a total win-win for me. Eris knew she was blushing at the cheers that erupted from the other women. The woman with her arms still around Cole's waist didn't join in. Maria must have been devastated to lose you on the set, she said. Maria is thrilled I'm doing the movie. She's been very supportive. She's a marvellous friend. Eris's keen sense of perception jangled at the lie everyone else took as truth. Will she see you in it? I'll make sure she has tickets along with the rest of the Fortune Rises cast. I'll miss them all. Eris found herself impressed by the masterful deflection Cole had employed. But Maria mostly, of course. The woman's voice hardened as she pressed for the answer she so desperately wanted. After all, you two were so wonderful on the screen together. You made a great couple. Cole's smile wavered a fraction as she tried to move away from the fan. Eris knew Cole didn't need her help, but she stepped in anyway. She moved around the woman and linked an arm through Cole's and addressed the fans. Thank you so much, ladies, for making the start of our A Pocket Full of Time journey something we'll never forget. We need to go back to the waiting area now before our security guard comes after us. I really hope you'll go see the movie when it's released. The women stood back, thanking them for their time, and Eris gently pulled Cole away from the persistent fan who clung on until the last minute. Cole found a voice again. Don't forget to check the official fan site for the movie and follow us on Twitter. You're going to see us trying our hands at time travel. The women all enthusiastically promised they would. Eris inobtrusively took Cole away from the one woman who still didn't move on. Instead, she stood staring directly at Cole. Oh, I'll be watching. Eris turned back around, unsure she'd heard right. The woman's words didn't sound as excited as the rest of the fans had. They'd sounded almost threatening. Also, all she saw, though, was the woman's back as she disappeared through the busy airport and soon vanished completely from Eris's sight. Do you know her? Eris asked as they both took their seats back by George. No, she's just a fan. Believe me, with some of the fans of that show, I'm just grateful she wasn't crying and making a scene. I have some die-hard fans who haven't taken my leaving the show well. Cole handed the phone over to George and quickly pointed out which button she wanted him to press. Then she took a seat back beside Eris and helped and put her arm around her shoulder. Say, we're going to be movie stars. Cole grinned and Eris automatically smiled for the photo. Cole showed Eris the picture, then posted it to various sites. The boarding call for their plane sounded over the speakers. George left them at the gate with best wishes and a shy request for a selfie with them. Once settled in her seat in first class, Eris looked out the window and couldn't wait to be off the ground. I think you're going to have to teach me your happy dance. Cole leaned close to whisper in Eris's ear over the din of the aircraft's engine. Eris had to fight not to close her eyes and leaning closer to the hot breath sending electricity over her skin. Why? I think I'm going to be very happy with this project. I can just feel it. And I could get used to this treatment. Cole settled into her seat beside Eris and sighed. Are you a nervous flyer? No. Why? I was just going to offer to hold your hand if you got scared. Are you a nervous flyer, Cole? Cole looked up from her magazine. I can be, if there's too much turbulence. Eris held up her left hand. Then consider this yours should the need arise. Cole reached out for her hand and squeezed it. I like you, Eris White. I think we can have a great time on this movie together. Eris loved the feel of her hand in Cole's. Felt oddly right. I like you too, Cole Calder. She reluctantly released Cole's hand to get herself more settled in her seat. I couldn't have wished for a better Hollister. And I couldn't have wished for a better Emily. The smile Cole gave her before she picked up a magazine again made Eris's chest flutter with 1,000 butterflies. She's just being kind, Eris thought. She knew better, though. She felt like she could read Cole Calder like an open book. There was more than kindness in those blue eyes when Cole looked at her. Eris felt the same spark of interest and attraction straight back. Sorry, I'll try that again. When Cole looked at her, Eris felt the same spark of instant attraction back. It was comforting being in Cole's presence. There was an ease between them. They just clicked. Eris felt like they'd always known each other. For a moment, she wondered if they were going to have more in common than the characters they were to play than she expected. I really need to bring my reading glasses next time.
I have put off getting new glasses during this pandemic, and I can tell that I can't see. That was excellent. Celebrity romance for the win. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Morgan Lee Miller. Unfortunately, I can't be there in person today, but I still get the chance to read you a scene from my upcoming book, Before, After, and Always. So the story is about Eliza and Blake, and both of them have gone through a huge loss in their life. And the story starts out with Blake into a motorcycle accident, and she has to go to the hospital. And Eliza's her doctor, and they have an instant connection. And once Blake is discharged, a couple weeks later, they run into each other, and Blake asks Eliza out for a drink. And I'm going to be reading you a scene where they finally get that drink. 2 surgeries, 3 hours of conferences, tons of paperwork and calls, and 2 rounds of 14 patients later, Eliza met Blake at the bar. The fact that she had something to do after her shift excited her, something different than going home and eating some microwave meal while diving into studying for her boards. She had something to look forward to, and it helped guide her through her busy workday. Blake didn't lie. She had an old-fashioned waiting for Eliza at their table. God, did she look sexy. She probably didn't even try. As Eliza walked over, some fluttering lodged in her gut. Now that Blake was free from a hospital bed, her transformation from recovering patient to a normal person was clear. She was stunning. Blake Navarro smashed any bullshit belief that women had to be feminine in order to be beautiful. Her short hair was buzzed on the sides and textured on top. The longer hair parted to her left and dangled halfway down her forehead. Eliza wondered how soft it would feel if she ran her fingers through it. When Blake smiled at her approaching the table, the smile had so much glow that little sweat beads formed at the back of Eliza's neck. She was simply gorgeous, and somehow Eliza had to get through a few rounds of drinks without sounding like an idiot. She'd been out of the dating scene for so long, she was rusty. How did she make conversation? How did she stop herself from staring at Blake's face for too long? How did she tame the blush? Wait, you really just worked a 14-hour shift? Blake asked as Eliza slipped into her chair. I did, and it was long, and this drink is going to do wonders. And yet you still look amazing. The compliment joined forces with the whiskey and heated Eliza's cheeks, but she knew it was a line. One Blake probably used on a lot of women. Someone as attractive, charismatic, and confident as Blake had a not so little black book. Eliza was sure of it. "How was your day?" Eliza said. Speaking of rusty, she never learned how to take a compliment, but she didn't have time at the moment to start. She needed her cheeks to go back to a normal color, and that was only possible by changing the subject. "Good. My uncle and I drove down to Tijuana to grab food for the restaurant." "Tijuana?" "Yeah, all of our ingredients come from Mexico. I wanted the experience to be as authentic as possible. We drive down once a week to pick up the purchase orders." "Is that the secret of why your food is everything?" "It is," she winked. Eliza felt it in her chest. "My grandparents had a food stall in Mexico City. They bought all their ingredients from produce vendors at the market. They wanted the most authentic Mexico City taste. You can't get that. You can't get more authentic than that. And I really like that aspect of the food. I want to give my customers the same authenticity." Eliza loved that answer. Passion for what she did poured out of Blake, and Eliza was there to collect it. "Are they the reason you got into cooking?" "Definitely. My brother, sister, and I would spend 2 weeks down in Mexico City every summer, and my grandparents put us to work. There were so many customers at the market every day. It was like an adrenaline rush. That's when I fell in love with it. The rush, smells, the tastes, and enjoyment on people's faces as they ate what you cooked. It's amazing. Seems like you really love your job." "Oh, I do." Blake's smile was so wide and genuine. It was contagious. She ran her hands through the long part of her hair, pulling Eliza's gaze. The hair fell perfectly back into place. For a simple movement, Blake sure made it look sexy. "So why a doctor?" The comment snapped Eliza out of the trance. "What? Why'd you want to be a doctor?" "That's my story on why I wanted to be a chef. Surely you have a story on why you wanted to be a doctor." Eliza sipped her drink to kill the pain that came with the loaded question. She hardly knew the woman and didn't want to spill her baggage and the trauma she'd gone through as a kid. That was the last thing she wanted. She wanted to hear more about Blake's love for cooking, more about her time in Mexico City. The last thing she wanted to do was talk about her past. "That's a loaded question," Eliza said. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean..." Eliza raised her hand. "It's fine, really. I just expected an answer like you've always dreamed of it since being a kid or something." "I think I wanted to be everything but a doctor when I was a kid. A teacher, a marine biologist, a lawyer." Blake hesitated for a moment and her eyes softened. "But you didn't." "No, I didn't." Eliza tried to ease the tension with a laugh, anything to shift them away from the memories taking over her mind. Anything that reminded her of her accident still had the ability to drown her thoughts and squeeze her throat and chest. "I was in a really bad accident when I was 18, and that really influenced it," Eliza said. "Oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't know. It's okay, really." Blake glanced down at her bottle and picked the label. Eliza blamed herself for letting the accident dim Blake's vibrant, infectious grin so early in the night. "I almost became a Marine," Blake said. "What?" "Yeah, I still can't believe it either. My older brother Adrian was a Marine and I idolized him. He was seriously the coolest, chillest guy I ever knew. When he joined, I wanted to join, which was crazy because I was 12. Even after he died, I was still set on joining. Even talked to recruiters when I was 17. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Yeah, he was killed in combat." Eliza remembered the beautiful dog tag tattoo on her ribs. "Is that what your tattoo is, on your ribs?" Blake nodded, and there was another shift, except something about this sullen moment was different than the one before, like the shift clicked them back in place. Eliza felt like she'd been camping out in left field since her accident, and then Blake unexpectedly joined her out there. A small smile found its way to Blake's lips again. "You're supposed to be observing my broken ribs, not my tattoo." "I couldn't help it. It was a beautiful tattoo." Eliza took a moment to reflect on the newfound knowledge, how both of their losses seemed to string them together in a way Eliza wasn't expecting at all. So she decided she would give Blake more. Maybe for the first time since the accident, she could talk to someone who was fluent in heartbreak and loss. "My girlfriend was in the car with me. She didn't make it. So that's why I wanted to become a doctor, to make up for the life I couldn't save." Blake reached out to grab Eliza's wrist. A jolt passed through her at the touch. It was comforting. The way Blake's stare held hers with empathy, she made Eliza feel seen for the first time since the accident. Her sister and her best friend were always there when she needed comfort, but they didn't know what it was like to go through something horrible like that. Eliza raised her glass. Blake retrieved her hand to join her. To Tess and Adrian, she said. The server brought the check, and Eliza had to admit that she was bummed at how quickly the night had flown by. Blake pulled out her wallet and placed the card on the receipt. No, Eliza said, and snatched it. But Blake's reflexes were quick. When she grabbed the checkbook, her fingers grazed Eliza's, but Eliza didn't flinch. Maybe without the 2 drinks, the spark that passed through her would have jolted her from the sudden touch, scared her back into her seat. But the whiskey had turned into confidence, like a chemical reaction, and the feeling that zigzagged through Eliza didn't scare her at all. She welcomed it. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the readings.
Okay, well, I would have to tell you that Morgan looked really great while she was giving that reading. And apparently I'm the only one who saw, but I'm glad you heard it. I hope you go buy her book, and I will post the link again in the chat roll. Before, After, Always by Morgan Lee Miller. And I promise you'll love it. So next, I would like to ask Dr. Shelley Thrasher. Dr. Thrasher, are you with us?
Yes.
What this is that Fiona's doing, but I love it. And so we'll all go away and let Shelley read us a story.
Okay. This is from my latest book, Hidden Dreams. It is set in March of 2020. 2 women are sitting in a tourist restaurant in the capital of Cambodia. Barbara Allen is her name. She's 70 years old, and she's a wealthy socialite from Dallas. She's gone on a 2-week adventure tour around the countryside. And then she decided to rest and go for another week or so by herself to a tropical island south of Cambodia. Unfortunately, she caught COVID. So she's stuck in the south on the island, and her tour guide, Dara Dith, comes down and helps her. So this is a story of when they both come back to the capital of Cambodia, and they decide to take a special little tour. Dara ghosted her warm hand over Barbara's. By the way, Dara is in her 60s. She speaks very fluent English, very correct English, more correct than Barbara does. And because she spent 30 years in the US, she was forced to come over here. Your mother appeared to you in a dream and suggested you stay in Cambodia and search for something here? Yeah, I know it sounds crazy. Barbara fingered her Versace sunglasses perched on top of her head. My mother left here 70 years ago. She glanced around the restaurant. You said she eloped, already pregnant with you? Yep. She never fit in with my dad's society scene in Dallas, but never came back here, lost touch completely. So you want me to help you, what do you call it, find your roots? Yeah, that's my dream was so real. It was like a vision. To be honest, I didn't pay much attention to my mom's background when we were in Dallas, and I feel terrible about taking her for granted all those years. Even though she's dead now, I'd like to know more about her. Barbara sipped her iced mango juice. Tell you what, I'll pay all our expenses and give you 3 times as much as you earn for leading a regular tour, Dara. Plus, you already know what a great tipper I am. Dara flinched, but then her dark, clouded eyes cleared a little bit. She took a deep breath, and finally she smiled. How can I resist such a generous offer? You know, I was beginning to wonder if I would be able to pay my rent this month, with COVID practically shutting down the tourist industry here. Oh, do you live nearby? Yes, on the outskirts of the capital. My place is small, but it is all I need since I travel so much. Can you leave soon on our trip? Barbara said. Dara evidently lived alone, but was she in a relationship? Dara nodded. Why not? How about in the morning? But then Dara stopped and stared at her with what seemed like concern. Would you not rather wait until you are sure you have recovered from your illness? Dara grabbed their check and held out her glass. I want to go now, as soon as possible. I'm sick and tired of just laying around. I got so much left to see. We can rest on the way, somewhere quiet, away from this noisy city. Dara finally raised her glass too, and they clinked them together. To a wonderful trip, Barbara said. I can't wait. Me either, but how would you like to travel? Rent a car and driver, take public transportation, ride my motorcycle. Barbara twisted her mouth to one side. I don't want to bother with driving ourselves or having a chauffeur. And public transport's too inconvenient and crowded. Your bike option sounds like fun. Dara stared at her, her black hair streaked with white tumbling over her shoulders. Come on, Dara. After surviving that horrible virus, I feel like living dangerously. Barbara sat up straighter in her chair. You never know what day might be your last. She glanced out the restaurant windows at the busy street. I've seen 4 or 5 people riding on one motorbike on those streets out there. Look, there goes one right now. Of course, some of the riders are kids. She paused. Just the 2 of us with a backpack each? We should fit fine. Are you sure? Dara looked at the noisy traffic whizzing by. I was not serious when I mentioned that as an option. But it is the main way most people get around here in my country. I feel very comfortable on a motorcycle. Well, that's good enough for me. Barbara threw her wadded napkin onto the table. I'll pack a few clothes that'll dry overnight and be ready to go first thing in the morning. She straightened the collar of her favorite blue and green wash and wear shirt. If I forget something, I can always buy it somewhere. Grabbing her Panama Jack hat from her lap, she scraped her chair backward on the concrete floor. Besides, if I get tired of what I'm wearing, I'll just leave it for the help and buy some of those loose Cambodian outfits I've been admiring in the markets. Barbara jumped up from the table, her energy stronger every minute. She handed a few large bills to the cashier, and she felt even more excited than she had been when she left Texas to fly over here. We're going to have a fabulous time, Dara. That's where the trip starts.
Well, that sounds like a fun adventure. I know Allie's thinking, I'm going to go there next. Or didn't you already go? Did you already go there?
I've been there.
Okay. Check. Well, I put you two together because I know you both have books that you wrote or that you traveled so that you could write off your trips and write books about them.
Yeah.
So I'm calling on Allie next.
All right. I haven't received my books yet, so I'll show you a picture of it after I'm done. But A Woman to Treasure actually starts in Paris, and then it moves back to New Orleans, and then it moves to London. So it's a kind of a whirlwind thing. But like I said in the beginning, this is one of my favorite books I've ever written. It involves, I like to watch the History Channel. So anything that had Templars, it has, I like to watch The Curse of Oak Island. They never find anything. I promise in this book we'll find something. But this is the very beginning, and it kind of sets the pace for at least finding of some clues that so then she can build on. So my characters are Levi Montbard, who is a historian from New Orleans, and Yasmin Hassani, who is a professor of women's studies and history from Marrakesh, Morocco. So they will eventually meet, but not yet. So this is the beginning of chapter 1. Lot number 26, a collection of scrolls recovered from the grave of a young girl. They are believed to be on ram skin and are a form of a childhood diary of a young girl they were buried with. The auctioneer pointed to the rolled skins tied with leather strips. The paleography and carbon dating put them at about 1300 AD. Levi Montbard sat on the end of the 4th row of the famous Drought auction house in Paris and tapped her numbered paddle on the side of her thigh. This was the lot she'd come for, although her grandfather, Cristobal, had already made quite a few purchases. He had a good eye for what would sell in Montbard antiquities and rare books back home in New Orleans, but the scrolls were for her private collection. We'll start the bidding at 5,000 euros, the man said as he smoothed down his tie. Levi lifted her paddle as her grandfather perused the rest of the catalog for the day's auction. There was a back and forth between Levi and an older man in the front, but he wasn't willing to go over 38,000. Sold to number 42, the next item. She and her grandfather stood, their mission accomplished. Lunch? Her grandfather asked. Are you sure you don't want to stay? She flipped through the catalog and pointed to the last lot. A Klimscott Chaucer doesn't come up often. It's in poor condition, but if it goes for a good price, it'll be a good investment. You've seen it already? Her grandfather laughed. Of course you have. Who's the beautiful woman working in the back who's willing to give up the house secrets for a time with you? I'm not revealing all of my sources. Come on, I'll buy you a crepe and a latte. Levi slowed her gait, not because her grandfather was feeble, but because he was 6 inches shorter. We'll be back in plenty of time. Do you know anything else about the scrolls you bought? Cristobal Montbard was the head of their family, and he'd instilled in his only son and then his only grandchild the family's love of history. The Montbard family wasn't in the antiquities business simply for profit, but to share with those who loved the past as much as they did, and to provide the treasures that would fuel people's imaginations. They were found outside of Jerusalem in an unmarked grave in what the archaeologists describe as a peasant burial site. The grave held a young girl, and the code the scrolls was written in was declared childhood nonsense. They sat at an outdoor cafe and she ordered for them in French. They most probably are, but it's good practice at breaking codes. They'll make a good wall hanging for someone if they turn out to be nothing. How hard could the code have been that the auction house didn't attempt to crack it? You know the auction houses, as well as the people putting the items up for sale. They're all about profit. She dropped 2 sugar cubes in the espresso the pretty waitress delivered and smiled at her grandfather. Why spend good money translating a simple exchange between children? But you don't think that's all it is. Think of the time period and where they were found. No one, much less a child, would have wasted scrolls on foolish childhood musings. Parchments was too valuable back then, and it wasn't as if you could reuse it. The site held plenty of other graves with museum quality pieces, so I was lucky this one fell through the cracks. It doesn't happen often when it's a state archaeologist, but it happens. The pieces they let go of will fund the rest of the dig they're on. No wonder the girls can't leave you alone when you use words like musings. Her grandfather's teasing was constant, but she loved it. Levi was close to her parents, but her grandparents, Cristobal and Diana, were her 2 favorite people in her life. Her mother's parents were also important to her, but they lived in London, and she didn't see them as often. While her grandfather Cristobal enjoyed his books, cigars, and whiskey, her grandfather Percy had summited Everest twice and had a professorship at Oxford. It was an intimidating family to be a part of when you consider the list of accomplishments on both sides, but they'd given her an adventurous heart. Believe me, there's a lot more than my grasp of the English language that makes that true. She loved the way her grandfather laughed. I have a gut feeling there's something hidden in that code, and I'm going to find it. It was good luck, they weren't highly advertised. There you go.
Woohoo! Adventure auctions. I know you love that History Channel.
I know. My next book's gonna be an Ancient Alien.
Please do. Okay, and I've saved her for last, but you all know who she is. Her name is Radclyffe, and she owns this company, and she writes excellent books, and here she is to read from her upcoming book, Unrivaled, yes?
Unrivaled, yes. Thank you. Okay. Thanks, everybody, for being here. This is Unrivaled, and it is the companion and follow-up to Passionate Rivals. It is a standalone romance, as is Passionate Rivals, but they do take place in the same universe. And the Unrivaled actually begins a day after the other one ends. But Unrivaled has a new romance between Declan Black and Zoe Cohen, and it also revisits some characters from Fated Love and several of the characters from interim books, all of which are standalone. This is from the first chapter. In fact, this is the opening paragraph, and it introduces the two characters, hopefully in an exciting way. A dilapidated red Volkswagen Bug careened around the corner and missed T-boning Declan's shiny new black Range Rover by an inch. Dec caught the blur of motion out of the corner of her eye just in time to yank the wheel to the left. The big SUV swerved across the road and bounced up onto the grassy lawn of a pale yellow West Mount Airy Victorian, narrowly missing the low stacked stone wall that marked the entrance to the drive. White knuckling the steering wheel, her vision blanking out and sweat bursting from every pore, she gasped against the crushing pressure in her chest, couldn't breathe. Her arms trembled and her midsection cramped as if she'd been punched. Sirens blared. Help was coming. They'd be here soon. Hurry. Have to hurry. Screams echoed the piercing cry of the sirens. The screams were hers in her memory. Just a memory. Dec fought her way through the fog of remembrance. Air flowed into her lungs and the stampeding thunder of her heart slowly settled. Reality returned and her vision cleared. She took another breath and then another. The sirens still wailed, but they weren't coming for her this time. She'd almost reached the medical center when a string of rescue vehicles overtook her. She pulled over, allowing them to pass, and followed them past the big sign indicating trauma admitting. That was new. Down the drive to the ER entrance. When they screeched to a halt in front of the wide double doors, she swung around them and darted into an empty staff parking lot. On still trembling legs, she climbed out, just as another ambulance tore into the emergency area. Dec had to jump out of the way to avoid being sideswiped. She landed awkwardly on her right leg, and the swift stab of pain shooting from her hip reminded her she wasn't who she used to be, as if being here wasn't reminder enough. Shoving the thoughts aside, she headed for the rear of the first ambulance in line. What's the situation? Dec asked the EMT who climbed out. Multiple car accident on the expressway. They're still extracting the injury. How many are we expecting? Dec jogged along beside them toward the ER entrance, ignoring her burning hip. Hard to tell. At least 8 cars were involved, most of them with multiple passengers. All right, what's the status? She halted as a young guy in wrinkled green scrubs, whose name tag read A. Armand, MD, Emergency Medicine, rocketed out the ER doors and yelled, "What have you got?" The female EMT replied, "Restrained male driver, closed head trauma, alert but oriented in the field. Fractured left humerus and left lower extremity." "Bracketing injuries," Dec said to the resident. "That means chest and abdomen may be involved. Make sure you get a chest x-ray and abdominal ultrasound as soon as you get the lines in." "Who are you?" Armand said. Dec tapped the ID hanging from the pocket of her pale blue Oxford shirt. "ER attending, get going." The young guy's eyebrows rose, but he said, "On it," and disappeared inside with the patient. When Dec turned around, 3 more ambulances began disgorging patients. A redhead in sky blue scrubs ran over to her. "I'm the ER charge nurse, Donna Carlisle." She spared a glance at the line of rescue vehicles. "God, I hate July 1st. A house full of newbies and this. Please tell me your staff." "Yep," Dec said. The nurse frowned, staring at Dec as if trying to place her. "Who are you again?" Distracted, Dec didn't reply, and the nurse didn't wait for an answer just as well. Sometimes Dec wasn't sure she knew the answer to that question herself. Zoe bolted outside and jerked to a stop. The parking lot was chaos. A clutch of ambulances perched in front of the entrance, light bars flashing, sirens blaring, radios blasting call signs and emergency dispatches. Medics guided stretchers onto the ground, pausing in their headlong rush, only long enough to shout a status report to the closest ER staffer. Zoe's gaze traveled to a slim brunette in a pale blue shirt and skinny tailored black trousers who stood in the center of the wailing vehicles, surrounded by a surreal aurora of calm. The rising sun glinted on the blue-black of her collar-length hair and reflected in shooting sparks off the silver of the buckle on her narrow belt. Whoever she was, she seemed to know what she was doing. At least the two ER residents orbiting in her wake, as she assessed and directed, focused on her as if she was the sun to their moons. Zoe understood why. Something in the woman's confident stance and the preternaturally quiet expression, despite the pandemonium, imposed order on the insanity. Zoe recognized authority when she saw it and sprinted in that direction. "We're getting full inside," Zoe said as she edged into the woman's orbit, "so we might need to set up a field unit out here." Zoe caught her breath as the woman spun to face her. She was striking and might have been called handsome. Hell, she was handsome, despite the faintly raised pink scar that crossed her forehead from her hairline to her left eyebrow, where it thinned down to a pale white line that interrupted the sweeping curve of her dark brow. The scar did nothing to detract from the arch of her cheekbones and the long line of her jaw or the faint hollow above the strong bones. A shock of dark hair dipped down onto her forehead, and she probably could have covered most of the scar with it if she'd chosen to, but apparently she hadn't. The scarred brow rose in question. Her eyes were very dark. Could eyes actually be black? Zoe didn't think so, but she couldn't see any hint of brown either. No flecks of gold or green or anything except deep, mesmerizing midnight on a starless night. "Declan Black," the woman said when Zoe remained tongue-tied. "ER attending. You are..." Her voice was low and full, not friendly as much as assured. Dark honey with a hint of liquid smoke. Zoe Cohen, senior surgery resident, 4th year." "Good. Take the next one over there, see what we've got." "I'm on it," Zoe said, finally getting her legs to move. As she turned away, Declan Black's face remained imprinted in her mind, the way a dream sometimes did behind closed lids. Thank you.
That was terrific as always. I know people are excited. They're saying so to see folks from other books in your books. and that perfectly leads us into the first question. Before I begin, though, I'd like to say that people want to hear more. I have one quick announcement, and that is that we will be having our next bookathon, a 3-day festival full of literary events, readings, panels, and author chats, April 23rd through 25th. It will feature authors who have March, April, and May releases. So all these folks plus more. So we will be posting all the links to that next week. So keep an eye out. If you're not already a subscriber to our newsletter, head to our website. You can get it right there in the center of the front page. You can sign up and you will get all the goings-ons right to your inbox. Feel free to toss some questions in the Q&A box. But the first one is, how do you decide to incorporate characters from past books? Is it just some spontaneous exercise? Is it planned? So Rad, we'll start with you on that one since you did that.
Well, the first time I did it, it was definitely not planned. It was never my intention to write a series. I was a firm believer that a romance book was a sort of self-contained story, and when it ended and the romance was over, so was the story. And then people liked Above All Honor, and I decided to write a follow-up. And now I do it very consciously. I don't do it for everything that I write, but I do it intentionally for 2 reasons. Number 1, because I like the characters or I like the world. And number 2, because my readers like them. I mean, obviously, if I were writing a series and no one wanted to read the follow-up stories, or if the sales were falling off, indicating to me that people were tired of the series, I would stop writing it.
Makes sense. So some of the others of you have done this as well, whether it's part of a series or not. Allie, I'm going to turn this question to you because I don't know if you did it on purpose. You crossed some worlds there with like Sep Savoy and Kane Casey and then
Yeah, those were
Dragon Tree
planned.
Legacy.
The devil books weren't planned. I turned it into Rad as an 800-page book, and surprisingly, she said no. This must be 2 books. So I was just going to be the 2 books and then go from there. And then now, I think it's like Rad said, you write them with the like this one I wrote, and I finally found the picture of it. It's this one, if you could see it. If with hopefully to make it a series, but the first ones, yeah, no, I don't really plan a whole lot. Unfortunately, I'm a pantser all the way, and with the devil, you do have to kind of plan a little bit because there's about 50,000 characters in it. So that one takes a little bit of finesse to put them all together.
So Lesley, your character, I mean, would you consider this part of a series, or do you have you have characters that go from book to book?
Yeah, the playing series, I love Trent. So Trent kept reappearing. With this one, it can be read on its own like Starstruck can. But if you read Starstruck, you get to know the 3 main characters from that one that come over into this. Some of the characters they just will not let you go. And it's just easier. You already know their rhythms. But it's fun to bring in other characters that gives their story, but you still have just that little bit of background with ones that people already know because people like them. And that's the best thing about it, because they won't leave my head. So I'm more than happy to have them stick in others as well.
Perfect. Fiona?
So I try to bring a character from every past book, at least one, into every book. This Bet the Farm is a continuation. It's a series, although it can be read as a standalone. So all the people from the first book are in there, and there's people in the 3rd book, the next book in the series, which comes out in September, are in this one, have a main feature. But if I have perfect match fans out there, Shelley and Claire make a big appearance in this book. They play a pretty good part in what happens in the book. So I love to reach back. I like to center all my books kind of in New England and Boston. So I definitely reach back into places we've been, like the Mirage, that's in the 1st book, that bar, it's in the 3rd book too. So you'll see that. And for me, it's like coming to visit an old friend, and it's like a little Easter egg for people who've read before, that they know that I'm paying attention, hopefully, as I write.
Awesome. Shelley, have you sprinkled characters from prior books? Well,
no, never. I've only written 4 books, and they're all individual.
Felice?
Well, it's interesting. This book is called Pursuit, and it's from the point of view of the young man who is going in pursuit of the woman. And I'm now writing a book called Pursued, and it's from the point of view of the woman.
Huh, that's interesting.
It's telling her story. And then the 2 of them will meet at the same climax in each book. I don't know if that's exactly the same thing, but it's sort of different.
I think that requires a lot of planning to get that right.
I just kept on feeling, as I was writing it and rereading it and revising it, hey, we want to know who she is. And I've written from the point of view of a woman before, and she is a remarkable story. It's gothic, it's strange, it's rich.
Well, that describes your book to a T right there. So Nance, this is your first book. So I'll kind of twist that question a little and just ask you, do you have a favorite of your characters?
Actually, I love Aaron in this book, and in my next book, An Alaskan Wedding, there's Andrea and Riley, and the 2 of them are just a blast. They are so much fun. So, and I do have plans of doing something with them in the future.
Okay, awesome. All right, we have another question, and This is a good one. So do you visualize a particular person that gives you inspiration when developing and writing your characters? Yourself, someone you know, a celebrity, or me?
Always you, Carson.
Always.
Exactly.
All right, Rad, seriously, do you? No, nobody?
No.
Springs from your head.
No, I see them in my head, but I never see, they're not based on an image of anyone or anyone that I know. They're very unique to who they are as individual characters in my mind.
Shelley?
I think that I use some of the same personality, and it goes from character to character. But as far as visualization, doing this little exercise for the Zoom was really good for me to visualize them, because what hat would they wear? What type of makeup would they wear? I wish I had done it before I wrote the book, so I would have all more details in the book. But I guess I want to get to know the characters to do the type of role playing in your head.
Nance, how about you?
I don't know that I use specific people, but parts of people's personalities are certainly involved. So it's more personalities, and then I put characteristics to them, give them faces, give them hair color, and doing the proposal is actually the best part, because in there you have to be so detailed of what your character looks like, what's their personality, that it really brings them to life for me. So,
how about you, Allie?
They're all me. No. Yeah. I was tall and skinny. Very muscular.
Yes, they are.
It's the wood chipper. It's the wood chipper.
Yeah, no. I really don't have anyone in mind. A lot of people have asked me this, like, do I have a certain actress or something? And like Rad, I have a picture of them in my head. And now they do share some of my characteristics, because I think it's easy to write what you know. I'm a little quirky, but so are the characters. So but no.
Are you homicidal too?
Sometimes. Traffic.
But
yeah, no, I don't. Yeah, I don't use anybody in particular.
All right, Lesley.
I'm not the other one out. I do look at like different actresses or singers and go, that's the kind of person and the kind of looks that I would like. But then they take characters of their own in my head. I have had it that there was somebody that I didn't base on a particular person, wrote everything down of how they looked, went to a concert and saw that person right in front of us.
Yeah, I was going to ask that as a follow-up question. If you've ever seen somebody out in the wild who just, you were like, oh, that's so-and-so.
It was creepy.
Yes.
Creepy, huh? All right, who did I meet? Fiona.
My books are all character driven, so I have an idea of a personality and a characterization, and then I apply a plot to it and what they look like. I'm not really a celebrity match kind of person. I think you should all envision the character the way you want. So if I do a really descriptive job, great. If I don't, then it's just like kind of whatever your preference is. I think it's important to let the reader choose. So for me, it's all character. This book, Beth the Farm, Lauren's quirky. She's funny. If she thinks outside of the box, she's a numbers genius. Like, she doesn't even think so, because she's kind of like a bubbly blonde, but she's also brilliant in her own way. And just kind of, that's how she ends up with this job about trying to save this farm, which you'll see. They can't figure out how to do it. And so her boss taps her to use a different perspective to try to find that angle. So, that was really fun to write. So me, it's always character based. And then, Thea's kind of like sexy, broody farmer chick. So there you go.
What you're saying is not me. Not based on
there's no wood chipper in this one. There's no.
Halle Valley does not star in your book. Felice, how about you? You have a big bulletin board full of movie stars that you pull from.
Somebody was interviewing me and asked me, said, oh, you've lived so many different lives already. And I said, well, not enough. And that's why I write books, to live other lives. And it sounds very, very selfish, but then I do share it with anybody who wants to. And I think that's, especially with these historical books that I'm doing, is that I'm trying to lived a different life in the 19th century, another book in the 18th century, and just try it out and see what it's like.
Perfect. So Ivan wants to know who on the panel are pantsters, which means you kind of write by the seat of your pants, and who outlines their books in advance. So if you're a pantster, raise your hand. Oh, look at these two outliners down here, Fiona and Felice.
Except my outlines look like a laundry list or a grocery list. They're just lines, you know.
Make sure to include these things.
Yeah, you know, he goes to the store. They have an argument.
I'm a plotter. I don't know if you can hear in the background, my little girls are both up from their nap. So for me, it's a matter of having a focused list of things to accomplish when they're sleeping. And when I write the proposal, I know it was brought up, Nance brought it up, I write a really detailed proposal. Some people send off like a paragraph to Sandy. I sent her 6 or 7 pages, which she either hates or doesn't. I don't know, she's never told me, but for me, it helps me stay on track. So I almost never hit writer's block because I know where the book's gonna start and end before I give it to her. So there might be one part where it says like, characters fight, but I have an idea what they're going to be fighting about as it gets up to that point. And I write in order too. I'm not crazy like Carson, so I can't jump around. I got to be consecutive in the way I write, and I got to be orderly in that way.
So for those of you who do not outline and are not crazy, because what's the biggest challenge of just kind of, or is there a challenge, or just do you find it invigorating to just not know what's coming next? I'll start with you, Lesley.
I always have the beginning, the middle, and the end. What goes in otherwise is its own thing. There's a lot of times that I do stuff that I always think, well, where the hell did that come from? But I do have the two, beginning and end, so at least that's on there, and the tiny little bit in the middle that goes, you want to be hitting this around this time, but fill in the rest, just go wild.
How about you, Rad?
I don't think being a pantster means you don't have any idea what you're going to be writing. I think that we just have a different, well, I can't speak for everyone, but for myself, I have a different sense of an outline. For me, it's story structure. I know my characters at the beginning, I know there's significant conflict, and I know the beats that I have to hit as I write the book. And if you've done it enough, you're confident that you will get the beats when you get there. And like Fiona, I know what's the begin. I know how it's going to begin, and I know how it's going to end, because they're going to meet and then they're going to end up together. So, you know.
Do you ever get surprised by something that happens?
All the time. I mean, I can remember one of the most kind of like interesting things that ever happened was when I was just beginning to write Love's Tender Warriors, and that was a long time ago. And I was bringing the character home for the very first time, and I realized that the person inside the house was her twin. It just came to me as I was writing it, because it was something that worked so well for the story, and it was totally unplanned. So that happens. But I think it's because you're writing the story intrinsically. If you're writing organically, these things happen scene after scene after scene. Just as if you outline it ahead of time.
Just kind of invisible outline. I mean, seriously, Shelley, how about you? Do you ever get surprised by something you're writing?
Well, all the time.
The biggest, is it Allie or me? The biggest surprise was the ending for this book. I had no idea how it was going to end, and I had about 4 different endings, and one of my beta readers threatened to divorce me if I did one of the ones. So I just kept going around and around. And at the last minute, I finally decided, I think with Connie's help, to have an ending. But it was, and I always feel like I'm getting to know my characters as I write. Mm-hmm. The more I write about them, the better I understand. And that has something to do with the plot, how it ends up.
That makes sense.
It's fun to do it that way.
How about you, Allie? You said
like I said, I'm surprised all the time, because every once in a while it kind of goes off on a tangent. You just never realize, where is this going to end up? But I think the hardest thing, though, especially if you write a series, and one, like I'm sure Rad has this, where it's a lot of books, so in the Devil series, it's a lot. It's to find, and we were just actually listening to the audiobook of the new one, and I was thinking to myself as I was listening to it, like, ooh, that's a plot line just hanging out there. Totally forgot about it. Got something to start off the new book for the next Devil book. But it's keeping all those plot lines. I mean, I try to reread as much as I can, but once you get up over like 5 or 6 books, it's kind of hard to do that. So,
Nance,
maybe I should plan a little bit, but I don't.
Keep doing what works for you, Ellie.
Yeah.
How about you, Nance?
As far as plotting out, I'm a sticky note psychotic person. I have sticky notes everywhere with ideas that I know I need to touch on at some point. I know this has to happen, or this has to happen, or a thought will come to me that a character just will not be quiet about. So that's, I don't know that I outline. I certainly always know the beginning, but it's just jotting down these little notes to make sure I touch on these different ideas, or I'll have I'll be in the car on the way somewhere and I'll have a whole conversation happen in my head. And I'm like, oh my God, that's perfect. And I'm talking into my phone or something just to not forget about it. So, but yeah, there's certainly things that just, kind of come to you. And otherwise I try and jot down things I know I need to, like Rad said, the beats, just following the beats.
That's awesome. So we have time for one more quick question. If you had to live the life of one of your characters in the current book for a year, which one would it be? And we'll start with Felice.
Say that again.
If you had to live the life of one of the characters in your current novel for a year, which one would it be?
Not my hero. His life is too exciting. It would probably be the English countess who's living in Venice when she meets him, and who complains that her husband is in one country and her lover is in another country, and she needs a companion.
Okay.
And she's very liberated in the 19th century, and she has her own castles and palaces in Venice, and she seems to lead the kind of life I would like to lead if I was a 19th century woman.
Well, me too.
Even now. Even now, in fact, I would like to lead it.
Fiona, farmer or not farmer?
Oh, no, not the farmer. I'm very much a city girl. I would certainly want to be Lauren for sure. She's got a pretty sweet life. She goes up to the farm on the weekends and she lives an expensive life here in the city, drives a sports car, has fancy clothes, and her mom's in a throuple and lives in a nudist colony. Like, she just seems like a really cool chick, like I would want to definitely be Lauren for a year. No complaints there.
Random things you throw in at the last minute. Lesley, how about you?
If I can live the year of their life after what's written in the book, then I would definitely pick Cole. But I don't think there's anybody in the book that I'm looking at. I don't want to live through what they live through. So definitely the year after.
Okay. Must read to find out why. Shelley, how about you?
I would probably pick the main character, Barbara, because I would get to stay in Cambodia longer. And she's developing, she's growing. So I'd like to grow along with her.
Awesome. Nance?
Erin Jacobs. She's just fun and kind of a badass. So
something we all aspire to be.
Exactly.
Vali?
I would have to be Levi Montbard, just simply for the travel.
Of course. And Radclyffe?
Well, I have lived their lives for a year, actually more like 8 years. But looking back, I suppose I would pick one of the ER docs because I like the intensity and the excitement of emergent surgery.
Trauma for Radclyffe. And so thank you everyone for joining us today. Thanks for putting up with my technical glitch, and please go buy all these books. They're all for sale. I've posted the link in the chat roll if y'all want to hold up your books, that would be great. Thank you for joining us. We'll be appearing April 23rd to the 25th with lots of fun entertainment for you. And this is BSB Preview signing out. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming. Great job.